power, respect, absolute control. When you run the most dangerous syndicate in New York, you expect everyone to bow. But Dominic Costa never anticipated that his biggest humiliation and greatest obsession would come from a fat waitress in a cramped Manhattan restaurant who spoke his mother tongue flawlessly. Fluorescent lights buzzed mercilessly in the back kitchen of Trattoria Bellini, casting a harsh glare on the chaotic dinner rush. Chloe wiped a bead of sweat from her forehead with the back of a flour-dusted wrist. At 240 pounds, the physical toll of a double shift in a high-end, fast-paced Italian restaurant was no joke. Her thick thighs chafed beneath the cheap black fabric of her uniform skirt, and her lower back throbbed with a dull, persistent ache that she had long ago learned to ignore. She was undeniably fat, a fact she carried with a mixture of quiet acceptance and the occasional sharp sting of societal judgment. But what Chloe lacked in conventional runway-ready aesthetics, she made up for in sheer, unstoppable competence. Navigating the cramped spaces between tables, Chloe balanced 3 scalding plates of veal ossobuco on her left arm and a massive tray of antipasti in her right hand. She knew the menu backward and forward. More importantly, she knew the neighborhood. Trattoria Bellini wasn't just a place for wealthy tourists on Fifth Avenue. It was a known neutral ground for some of the city's most ruthless men. Tonight, the air in the main dining room was entirely sucked out by the arrival of a single party. Dominic Costa didn't walk into rooms, he claimed them. Heir to the Costa family, a syndicate with deep, bloody roots tying back to the old-world Cosa Nostra in Palermo. Dominic was a man sculpted from violence and expensive tastes. He wore a custom-tailored charcoal Brioni suit that clung to his broad shoulders, his dark hair slicked back impeccably. Flanked by his 2 top lieutenants, Luca and Vincent Dominic, moved with the predatory grace of a man who held the city's lifeblood in his hands. Whispers rippled through the restaurant. Cutlery was set down quietly. Diners suddenly found their own shoes deeply fascinating, terrified of making accidental eye contact. The maître d', a usually pompous man named Leo, practically tripped over his own feet, rushing to guide Dominic's party to the VIP booth, tucked in the shadowy corner of the restaurant. Chloe was assigned to their section. "Don't mess this up, Chloe." Leo hissed, his face pale and slick with nervous sweat as he intercepted her near the espresso machine. "That's Costa, Dominic Costa. If his wine is poured wrong, or if his steak is overcooked, he won't just leave a bad Yelp review. He'll burn this place to the ground with us inside it." "I know who he is, Leo," Chloe replied, her voice steady. She grabbed a fresh cloth, adjusted her apron over her wide hips, and took a deep breath. She wasn't intimidated by men in expensive suits. She had spent a decade of her childhood in a small coastal town near Catania, Sicily, living in hiding with her late father, a disgraced forensic accountant who had crossed the wrong people. She knew the Mafia. She knew their posturing, their unspoken rules, and most importantly, she knew their language. Approaching the table, Chloe kept her expression perfectly neutral. Dominic sat at the center of the booth, leaning back against the red leather, casually twirling a heavy silver lighter between his long fingers. Luca and Vincent flanked him, their eyes scanning the room like hawks. "Good evening, gentlemen," Chloe said, producing a notepad. "Welcome to Trattoria Bellini. Can I start you off with some sparkling water or a bottle from our reserve list?" Dominic didn't look up immediately. He finished lighting a thick imported cigar blatantly, ignoring the city's indoor smoking laws, knowing nobody would dare enforce them on him. He exhaled a plume of blue smoke, and slowly his dark, calculating eyes drifted upward. His gaze raked over her. It was not a look of interest. It was a thorough, degrading appraisal. He took in her round face, the thick curves of her waist, and the way her apron strings dug into the soft flesh of her sides. A cruel, arrogant smirk touched the corner of his lips. He turned to his men. Instead of addressing her in English, Dominic shifted effortlessly into a rapid, thick Sicilian dialect, the kind of hyper-regional slang that even mainland Italians struggled to comprehend. "Guardate questa!" Dominic sneered to Luca, his voice dripping with aristocratic contempt. "Look at this one. They feed the pigs exceptionally well in America. I'm surprised she can even walk to the table. We'd better order double, or she'll eat half our plates in the kitchen before they even reach us." Luca and Vincent chuckled low and guttural, sharing a look of cruel amusement. They assumed, as everyone did, that this overweight, thoroughly American-looking waitress with the name tag Chloe was just another clueless local, completely ignorant of the venom being spit right in front of her face. Chloe's pen froze on the paper. For a fraction of a second, the humiliation burned hot in her chest. It was a familiar, tired script. Society always reduced her to her size, stripping away her intellect, her history, and her dignity, just because she carried extra weight. But the humiliation vanished instantly, eclipsed by a surging, icy wave of pure defiance. Her father had taught her the Sicilian dialect to survive, to understand when the wolves were at the door. He hadn't taught her to cower. She took a slow, deliberate breath, letting the heavy silence stretch for one agonizing second. Chloe did not look away. She did not blush. She did not retreat. Instead, she clicked her pen shut with a sharp, echoing snap that cut through the low hum of the dining room. She leaned forward slightly, resting her knuckles on the edge of their white-clothed table, bringing herself uncomfortably close to Dominic's personal space. When she spoke, her voice wasn't the polite, high-pitched customer service tone she had used moments before. It was low, raspy, and laced with the exact same harsh, rolling, regional accent Dominic had just used. "Se prestassi tanta attenzione alle tue buone maniere, quanto al mio girovita, Don Costa." Chloe fired back her Sicilian absolutely flawless, the rolling R's, and clipped vowels hitting the air like pistol shots. "If you paid as much attention to your manners as you do to my waistline, Don Costa, you wouldn't be eating at a table by the kitchen door like a peasant." The effect was instantaneous. Vincent choked on his glass of water, coughing violently into his napkin. Luca's hand immediately dropped beneath the table, his instinctual reaction to a perceived threat, sending his fingers straight to the grip of his concealed firearm. But Dominic froze. The silver lighter slipped from his fingers, clattering loudly against the fine china on the table. The cruel smirk was violently wiped from his face, replaced by an expression of pure, unadulterated shock. His dark eyes widened, snapping up to meet hers. For the first time all evening, he wasn't looking at a fat waitress. He was looking at a ghost. He was looking at an equal. The heavy, oppressive silence stretched between them. The surrounding tables seemed to vanish. "Chi diavolo sei?" Dominic demanded, his voice dropping an octave, slipping back into the dialect. "Who the hell are you?" "I am the woman taking your order," Chloe replied in English, seamlessly shifting back to her professional demeanor, though her eyes blazed with unapologetic fire. "Now, we have a fantastic tomahawk ribeye on special tonight. Or if you're worried about my appetite, I can bring you a simple garden salad. Your choice." Luca half stood his face, turning an angry shade of crimson. "You insolent little—" "Sit down, Luca," Dominic commanded softly. He didn't raise his voice, but the absolute authority in his tone caused his lieutenant to drop back into the booth instantly. Dominic's eyes never left Chloe's. The initial shock was melting away, slowly replaced by a burning, intense curiosity. The air crackled with a sudden, dangerous electricity. He leaned forward, bracing his elbows on the table, studying the fierce defiance in her round face, the set of her jaw, the way she refused to break eye contact, despite knowing exactly who he was and what he was capable of. Women in his world were usually slender, heavily manicured, and terrifyingly submissive. They agreed with him. They feared him. This woman did neither. "Catania," Dominic murmured, testing the sound of the word. He recognized the specific inflection in her accent. It wasn't just general Sicilian. It was Eastern. It was the streets of Catania. "You learned to speak on the eastern coast. Who taught you?" "My father." Chloe answered, keeping her tone clipped and guarded. "And he taught me that true men of respect don't need to insult the working class to feel powerful." Dominic let out a sudden bark-like laugh that startled even his own men. It wasn't a mocking laugh. It was genuine. It was the sound of a man who was utterly, completely captivated. "I apologize," Dominic said smoothly, switching to perfect, unaccented English. He reached out slowly, moving his water glass to the side, clearing the space between them, as if removing a barrier. "You are right. It was a crude peasant's remark. I am Dominic. I know who you are. The whole city knows who you are," Chloe said, unyielding. "And yet you stand here lecturing me." Dominic observed a dangerous smirk returning to his lips, though this one was devoid of the earlier disgust. It was predatory, intrigued. "Tell me your name." "Chloe. Your last name, Chloe, from Catania." Chloe hesitated. Her last name was Evans, adopted by her father after they fled. But giving him any personal information felt like handing a loaded gun to a madman. "Just Chloe. Now are you ordering, or are you just going to interrogate me while my other tables wait?" Dominic held her gaze for 3 long seconds. He was a man who took what he wanted. And right now he realized with a strange, twisting sensation in his chest that he wanted to know absolutely everything about this woman. He wanted to know how she carried her weight with such armor, how she learned his language, and how she managed to make him feel utterly off balance with a single sentence. "The ribeye," Dominic finally said, leaning back. "Rare. And bring 2 bottles of your best Barolo." "Right away," Chloe said, turning on her heel. "And Chloe," Dominic called out, just as she took a step. She paused, looking back over her shoulder. Dominic's eyes were dark, tracking the curve of her hips as she stood her ground. "You are the only one who serves this table tonight. Nobody else. Do you understand?" Chloe didn't nod. She just gave him a sharp, knowing look and walked away toward the kitchen. As the swinging doors closed behind her, Dominic Costa reached down and picked up his silver lighter. He ignited it, staring into the small flame. For the first time in 10 years, the ruthless boss of the Costa family wasn't thinking about territory money or blood. He was thinking about a waitress who had just put him perfectly beautifully in his place. Service dragged on for another 3 grueling hours, but the atmosphere inside Trattoria Bellini had fundamentally shifted. Every time Chloe stepped out of the kitchen, she felt the heavy, undeniable weight of Dominic Costa's gaze tracking her. He didn't stare like a predator waiting to strike. He watched her like a man trying to decipher a complex, ancient text. He noted the way she carried the heavy trays without a tremor, the way she effortlessly commanded the bus boys in rapid Spanish, and the proud, unyielding posture she maintained despite her obvious exhaustion. When Dominic's party finally rose to leave just past midnight, Leo the maître d'hôte practically bowed them out. Dominic didn't spare Leo a single glance. He walked straight up to Chloe, who was wiping down a nearby table. He reached into the inner breast pocket of his bespoke suit, pulled out a thick linen envelope, and slid it onto the polished wood under her rag. "For the exceptional service." Dominic murmured, his voice a low rumble. And the education. Before she could respond, he was gone, sweeping out the glass doors onto Fifth Avenue, with Luca and Vincent trailing like shadows. Chloe opened the envelope. Inside was a stack of crisp $100 bills, easily $5,000, and a sleek black business card with a single gold-embossed phone number on it. Nothing else. By 2 a.m., the restaurant was locked, and Chloe stepped out into the biting chill of a New York November. Rain had begun to fall in icy, stinging sheets, slicking the pavement of West 46th Street. She pulled her worn wool coat tightly around her generous curves, exhausted to her very bones. Her apartment in Astoria, Queens, felt like 1,000,000 miles away. A sleek, midnight black Lincoln Navigator suddenly idled to the curb beside her, its tires hissing against the wet asphalt. The tinted rear window rolled down with a soft mechanical hum, revealing Dominic Costa in the dimly lit leather interior. "Get in, Chloe," he said. It wasn't a request, it was a statement of fact. "I take the N train, Don Costa. I don't get into cars with the syndicate," she replied, gripping her oversized tote bag, the rainwater, already flattening her hair against her cheeks. "It's pouring and the N train is stalled at Queensboro Plaza due to a signal failure." Dominic countered, opening the heavy door from the inside. "I am not asking you to join the family. I am offering a woman who works on her feet all night a dry ride home. Do not insult my hospitality twice in one evening." Chloe hesitated. Her feet were screaming in agony, and the cold was seeping through her shoes. With a heavy sigh that conveyed her immense reluctance, she climbed into the sprawling back seat, bringing a gust of cold rain with her. The door clicked shut, enveloping her in the rich scent of fine leather, expensive cologne, and danger. "Astoria," she told the driver through the partition, not looking at Dominic. As the SUV smoothly merged into the desolate late-night traffic, the silence between them was thick and charged. Dominic poured 2 glasses of amber liquid from a crystal decanter, built into the console, offering one to her. She took it cautiously. "Evans is a fake name," Dominic stated quietly, staring out the window at the blurred city lights. "I had Vincent make a few calls while we ate our ribeye. Chloe Evans doesn't exist before 2012. But a girl named Chloe Rossi, daughter of Andrew Rossi, vanished from Catania right around that time." Chloe's blood turned to absolute ice. The glass in her hand trembled. Andrew Rossi, her father, the brilliant forensic accountant who had discovered $3 million missing from the Lucchese family's offshore accounts, only to realize the theft was an inside job by a treacherous underboss. To save his life and hers, Andrew had stolen the ledgers as insurance and fled to America. He had died of a heart attack 2 years ago, taking the location of the ledgers to his grave. "If you know who I am," Chloe whispered, her voice tight with suppressed terror, "then why am I still breathing? The Lucchese family has a bounty on the Rossi name." Dominic turned his head slowly, his dark eyes locking onto hers in the shadowy cabin. "Because the Lucchese family are animals, and I am a businessman, and more importantly, because I do not care about a dead man's ledgers. I care about the woman who stood up to me." He shifted closer, erasing the distance between them on the wide bench seat. He reached out his large, warm hand, gently taking the trembling glass from her fingers and setting it aside. His gaze dropped to her waist, then back up to her eyes. "You carry a heavy burden, Chloe," Dominic said softly. "You hide in plain sight, making yourself invisible in a city that only values thin, fragile illusions. But you are not an illusion. You are substantial. You are brilliant. You are real." To her shock, his hand came to rest lightly on her thick thigh, a gesture not of aggression, but of profound reverence. He wasn't disgusted by her size. He was captivated by her gravity. "I don't need your protection," Chloe said, though her voice wavered at his touch. "You don't," Dominic agreed, a fierce smile playing on his lips. "But you are going to let me court you anyway." 3 weeks passed, and the underworld of New York City quietly began to shift on its axis. Dominic Costa was relentless. He didn't send her superficial bouquets of roses. He sent her things she actually valued. First, it was a first-edition copy of an Italian cookbook she had mentioned in passing. Then it was a deed to a small, struggling bakery in Brooklyn that had belonged to a friend of her late father, the mortgage mysteriously paid off in full. He visited Trattoria Bellini every Tuesday and Friday, sitting in her section, speaking to her in rapid-fire Catanian dialect, slowly peeling back the layers of her defensive armor. Chloe found herself falling for the ruthless mob boss. Beneath the violence and the bespoke suits, Dominic was an intellect who matched her own. He respected her mind, and in the dark, quiet corners of his penthouse overlooking Central Park, he worshipped her body with a devastating, consuming passion that made her forget every cruel insult she had ever endured about her weight. But not everyone was enchanted by the new arrangement. Luca Dominic's fiercely traditional lieutenant viewed Chloe as a massive liability. He couldn't fathom why the Don was obsessed with an overweight working-class waitress who happened to be the daughter of a marked man. To Luca, Chloe was a spy, a Lucchese plant waiting to destroy the Costa Empire from the inside. On a Tuesday night when Trattoria Bellini was closed for renovations, funded entirely off the books by Dominic, Chloe was alone in the kitchen, testing a new recipe for ricotta cannoli. The heavy steel door at the back of the alley groaned open. Chloe didn't turn around immediately, assuming it was the night delivery driver. "Put the flour by the walk-in. Please," she called out. The distinct click of a pistol hammer being pulled back echoed through the tiled kitchen. Chloe froze. She turned slowly to see Luca standing by the prep tables, his silencer-equipped Glock pointed directly at her chest. His face was twisted in a mask of pure hatred. "The boss has lost his mind," Luca spat, stepping further into the fluorescent light. "He's weak. He's letting a fat, worthless rat from Catania dictate his moves. The Lucchese family reached out to me today, Chloe. They know you're alive. They know who your father was. They offered us a truce new territory in Brooklyn if we just hand you over." Chloe's heart hammered against her ribs, but the survival instincts her father had beaten into her flared to life. She didn't scream. She slowly wiped her flour-covered hands on her apron, and Dominic said no. Chloe deduced, keeping her eyes locked on Luca's weapon. "Dominic told them to go to hell," Luca snarled. "He's going to start a war over you, a war we can't afford. So I am going to fix this. I am going to put a bullet in your head, dump you in the East River, and tell the boss the Lucchese's got to you first." "Luca," Chloe said, her voice dropping into that icy, commanding Sicilian tone she had used on her very first night. "You are making a colossal mistake. You think my weight makes me slow. You think my apron makes me helpless." "I think you talk too much," Luca snapped, raising the gun. Chloe didn't wait for him to pull the trigger. With terrifying speed, fueled by pure adrenaline, her hand shot out, grabbing a massive, searing hot cast-iron skillet resting on the industrial stove beside her. In one fluid motion, she hurled the heavy pan and the pool of boiling duck fat inside it, directly at Luca's face. Luca screamed a horrific gurgling sound as the boiling oil caught him across the eyes and neck. The gun went off wildly, the bullet shattering the espresso machine behind Chloe in an explosion of ceramic and steam. Blinded and in agonizing pain, Luca dropped the weapon, clawing at his blistered face. Chloe didn't hesitate. She grabbed a solid wooden rolling pin from the counter, closed the distance, and swung it with all her considerable weight, cracking it hard against the side of Luca's knee. He collapsed to the floor, whimpering, utterly neutralized by the woman he had just called a worthless rat. The back door suddenly slammed open again. Dominic burst into the kitchen, his own weapon drawn, his chest heaving with Vincent right behind him. He had tracked Luca's phone, suspecting a betrayal, but he expected to find a tragedy. Instead, Dominic froze in his tracks. The scene before him was straight out of a Renaissance painting of vengeance. Luca was writhing on the floor, groaning in agony. Standing over him, breathing heavily, flour dusting her face, and a massive wooden rolling pin clutched in her hand like a scepter was Chloe. She was completely unharmed, her dark eyes blazing with a ferocity that took Dominic's breath away. Vincent lowered his gun, his mouth hanging open in sheer disbelief. He looked at the 240-pound waitress, then down at the seasoned Mafia hitman crying on the floor. Dominic slowly holstered his weapon. A slow, dark, incredibly proud smile spread across his face. He walked past the moaning Luca, not even giving his former lieutenant a second glance, and stepped up to Chloe. He gently took the rolling pin from her grip and tossed it onto a metal prep table with a loud clatter. "I told you." Chloe breathed her hands, shaking slightly now that the adrenaline was fading. "I don't need your protection." "I know Mia Regina," Dominic murmured, cupping her round face in his large hands. "My queen. I know. You are the most terrifying, magnificent creature I have ever known." He kissed her deeply and fiercely, amidst the smell of gunpowder, shattered espresso, and hot oil. It was a seal of absolute devotion. Dominic broke the kiss and looked down at Luca. His voice turned to cold steel. "Vincent, clean this garbage up. If he survives the burns, take him to the warehouse. He will beg for death by the time I am done with him." "Yes, boss," Vincent said, quickly, rushing forward. He looked at Chloe with a newly minted, profound respect. "Are you okay, Miss Chloe?" "I'm fine, Vincent," she said, straightening her apron. "Just a little mess in my kitchen." Dominic wrapped his arm around her thick waist, pulling her flush against his side. He didn't care about the flour ruining his suit. He had finally found his equal. The Costa family was about to face a war with the Lucchese syndicate, but as Dominic looked at the fierce, brilliant, unapologetic woman in his arms, he knew they wouldn't just survive it. They would conquer it all. Because New York was about to learn a very hard lesson. You never ever underestimate a Sicilian woman, especially one who knows exactly how much space she deserves to take up. Did you see that twist coming? Chloe absolutely destroyed Luca and proved she is not someone to mess with. Completely flipping the script on the Mafia boss trope. If you loved seeing this fierce, curvy queen claim her throne and put the underworld in its place, smash that like button right now. Share this video with fellow Mafia romance fans and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another epic pulse-pounding story. Drop a comment below with your favorite moment.